Okay. Hey, hi, everybody. Before we get
Hey,
started,
Jen.
I just want to make one announcement that she didn't make. Okay. I am going to be doing two groups, two inner child groups. I'll be doing an all women's group in person on Thursdays at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, starting on the 9th of the 8th of September. And then I'll be doing an online mixed group, and that'll be starting on the 23rd of September. That'll be on Saturday mornings from 10 to 11:30. If you're interested, just contact us at Starting Point, and then we'll take care of it and we'll let you know what it's really all about. Okay. All right. I want to begin tonight. We're starting a new series tonight. We're doing the series on relationships, one of my favorite series. And basically, I'll tell you the story about that in a couple of minutes. But I want to kind of do the reading from the language of letting go. And I picked the reading for November 7th. Relationships. There's a gift for us in each relationship that comes our way. Sometimes the gift is a behavior we're learning to acquire. Detachment, self-esteem, becoming confident enough to set a boundary. We're overcoming our power in another way. Some relationships trigger healing in us. Healing from issues of the past or an issue we're facing today. Sometimes we find ourselves learning the most important lessons from the people we least expect to help us. Relationally teach us about loving ourselves as loving someone else. Maybe just learn to let others love us. We don't have to control the process. We'll understand when it's time. And also trust that the gift is precisely what we need. Today, I'll be grateful for all of my relationships. I'll be open myself to the lesson and the gift in each person in my life. I will trust that I too am a gift in other people's lives. I want to share two things with you as I get into this tonight, because I have to apologize to you before I start, because I might get you a little bit depressed tonight. I know Jean doesn't mind. I have to get you a little bit depressed. We're going to talk about unhealthy relationships. And unfortunately, so many times in life, we have to kind of look at this first. But I promise you, I'll spend 3 weeks on the positive side of it all. I want to share that because basically when we talk about relationships, and I'll be talking a lot about that over the next 4 weeks, relationships are not just between two people. It can be between you and your job, between you and your children, between you and a family member. There'll be a lot of different aspects and concepts. We're involved in many different types of relationships every day of our life. And relationships really are the gifts of life. They're our teachable moments. The first book I wrote, I'm grateful for this in so many thousand ways, because I wrote this book called Relationships, the Gifts of Life. It's the first book I ever wrote. I have to tell you a story about this book and about what I'm going to be talking about tonight. You know, God has really helped me in so many ways to be able to carry a message of love and peace to many people in the course of my life. I'm grateful. But I remember back in I think it was 84 or 85. I can't, my senior citizen memory is not correct, but way back then I was giving a talk at Malvern Institute in Malvern, Pennsylvania. And after the talk was over, I was sitting in the cafeteria having a cup of coffee. And this lady sat down with me. Her name was Annie. And we just started talking. You know how things work. God works in mysterious ways. I said to Annie, Annie, someday people are bugging me to write a book. I said, I don't know how to write a book. I wish they would leave me alone. But maybe someday I'll get somebody to take my lectures. We did tapings back then. Transcribe them on a computer, and then use that as a manuscript. And then he said, well, really, Vince? I said, don't worry about it. I did it already. I've been coming to your lectures for 3 years, and I've been doing that for 3 years. So the next week, she brought in the manuscript for my first book and handed it to me. It's totally amazing. Then a good friend of mine from the Philadelphia Inquirer got a hold of it and helped me put it into a book form. I found all that very interesting, how God works in mysterious and powerful ways. And a lot of it is centralized around today's topic, which is the concept of relationships, which really are the gifts of life. The ultimate relationship that we have in our life and I'll spend 3 weeks talking about that and other situations. The ultimate relationship is the one that we have with ourselves. It is the ultimate of all relationships. Because I truly can't have a good, healthy relationship with other individuals and people unless I have them with myself as a person. I'll give you an example of this in my own life. As a seminarian, as a little boy growing up, going into seminary at an early age, and even in my younger years in the priesthood, I really had no idea at all who I was. I had no sense of myself at all. I was like an empty shell. I didn't realize this though. So what I did, I literally just performed the way everybody else wanted me to perform. And I was told I was going to be this, so I did a good job at it. But I can tell you what a great job I did. The bottom line was I literally functioned very well externally as a priest, but I always had this issue going on inside of me. The issue of emptiness and loneliness, and also the issue of fear and control. And to me, these are the big areas that are danger points in all relationships in life, especially the one you have with yourself. And so really, in reality, I never realized how scared I was to actually let people come to get to know me. Why was I scared? Because I didn't know who I was. I knew what I could function at. I knew about the outside. So I learned to stay busy, stay active, stay involved, to do everything for everybody else, stay connected. And as a result, that became my normal. And so I constantly looked to others for affirmation. Looked at everything from the outside, not from the inside. It took me years later to finally get in touch with that. After a couple of addictions and nervous breakdown, a few other odds and ends, finally to begin to open up that concept. I remember a doctor in the hospital when I was having a breakdown saying to me, he said, "Vincent, you're an empty shell. You're spiritually dead. You have no idea who you are." I didn't truly understand him back then, but now I do. And I realized the fact that I never took the time to stand still to look at me and find me. And so many of us get ourselves involved in different types of relationships. We migrate towards them. We can use them in many ways. I can make anything into an addiction. I can make a person into addiction. I can make a substance. I can make a relationship. I can make my family. I can make work. I can make a lot of things into an addiction if I use it as a place to isolate, to hide, and to run away from having to deal with the reality of what's going on inside of me. So when I talk about relationships, I also talk about codependency, and I talk about the 3 elements of relationships in codependency. Yeah, my standard thing I talk about is things of isolation and avoidance, fantasy and being scared, afraid, and caretaking about control. So when it comes to relationships, if I don't really have a good sense of who I am, then basically I take these traits and these characteristics into all of my relationships, and they become basically a place in which I can survive and get through life. Isolation is a good example. As we shared in codependency, usually these are lonely people, scared people who have no sense of self, and so they look for that in somebody else. Or they look for it in a job or someplace else, but very many times they look for it in a relationship. See, the only problem with this type of relationship is it can become a very controlling, a very manipulative, very possessive type relationship because I want you to be everything for me. It's like that old song that was back to the 1950s. It goes like this. You are my everything. You are my life. You are my all. Doesn't that sound romantic? It's actually sick. It means I don't exist, but you make my existence. And therefore, once you come into my life, then I'm scared you're going to reject me, that you're going to abandon me, you're going to criticize me. So what do I have to do? I have to hold on tight. The more we hold on tight and try to control situations or relationships, the more we chase them away and drive people crazy. We forget the concepts of relationships. They're supposed to be unconditional. They're supposed to be open. They're supposed to be a way of learning and growing. And very many times because of our own fears and things going on inside of us, because many of us never got the foundations for relationships, which go back to our childhood. Because for a little girl, daddy's supposed to be the love of her life. That is supposed to be her role model for relationships. For a little boy, it's supposed to be mommy. Daddy is also supposed to be our role model for what it means to be a man. And for a little girl, mom is supposed to be a role model for what it meant to be a woman. And so all these things are part of the things we're supposed to learn, but many of us never really experienced a lot of this. And so we learned that relationships were control, they were fear, things in that direction. In isolation, very many times, what I can do then, I can isolate somebody, make them my life. I can then basically use it as a control concept. I'm always afraid to death that something's going to happen. I remember one time a lady told me this story. She said she found this husband, this guy, she married him, and basically he overprotected her and didn't want her to do anything. Just stay there and take care of the house, take care of the kids, and take care of me, and don't go anywhere. Every time she wanted to go somewhere, he got scared. He got afraid. He was afraid that she will reject him and abandon him. So as a result, the more you hold on, the more tight you get. She even told me a story one time that he wanted to know where she was going and didn't want her to go. So he took something off of the engine of the car so the car wouldn't go. They're all control stuff. Fear and control, two dangerous things in the course of life because we're afraid. And especially rejection and abandonment are tremendous fears. They create a lot of problems in the course of our journey in life. We also go into the area of fantasy, and fantasy is the exact same thing. So many times in fantasy, what am I doing? I'm scared of relationships. I may have grown up in a home or an environment that was crazy, insane, or a place where I was hurt, went through a lot of trauma. And to me, relationships are scary because I've seen the things around me. And so very many times I have a tendency to migrate in different ways towards relationships. And because I'm scared of relationships, sometimes I like what I call excitement relationships, which means I like living on the edge. It's almost like I'm so used to abusiveness, I'm so used to insanity, I'm so used to craziness that I actually enjoy being around people that basically I'm not supposed to be around. I like the excitement and the craziness of it. I like getting involved in jobs and things that give me a lot of excitement, a lot of craziness. I can become very insane and crazy in the course of my life. And it's almost like that excitement is something that keeps me going all the time. And as a result, then I literally, I actually hurt people. Because as soon as you say that magic word, responsibility and commitment, you scare me half to death. I run out the front door. See, I don't want that. I want the fun part of it. I'll give you an example of this. I like using examples because it kind of brings it out. I remember a lady coming to see me one day at Starting Point, and she brought her husband in. He was totally captive. I know that because he had the ball and chain around his leg when he arrived. But anyway, she came in and she sat there. He was sitting in a corner, not saying a word. She got up, she stood up, and she said to me, "Hey, Vince, take a good look at me." Of course, in my head, I'm saying, "Where's this going?" He says, "Take a look at me. Aren't I a good-looking woman? I don't understand things. I'm a good-looking woman. I work out every day. You know, I'm really." And that man over there, see that man? He won't come near me. He won't touch me. He won't have sex with me. And he goes downstairs in the chat rooms and has sex on the computer in different places, but never, ever coming near me again. It wasn't like that in the beginning. I don't know what happened to him. I had to explain something to her. I understood it. Because basically when they were courting, then basically she was exciting. He was excited. There was kind of a craziness to it. He also had somewhat of a sexual addiction too, but he was kind of crazy with the thing. Then they got married, more excitement, more craziness. They went on a honeymoon, it was fantastic. All this stuff was wonderful until reality set in. As soon as reality set in, called responsibility, called commitment, and then the invaders arrived. They're called children, by the way. Then all of a sudden, life changes, everything changes, and the excitement is gone. Now the work is there. So what does he do? You're not exciting anymore. This life is not exciting anymore. So I go down to the chat rooms so I can get another fix and some more excitement. We see this a lot of times in fantasy. We call that the excitement fantasy. Then there's the other type of fantasy, which is even scarier, okay? And that's a creative fantasy when it comes to relationships. That means I don't want to really get close to anyone, but I use my mind to create the relationship. I use my mind to be able to connect. And so as a result, I can actually use my imagination and use my mind to create a relationship. Flora, can you mute yourself, please? To actually create a relationship. It's a scary concept. So really, in reality, what happens in this kind of a relationship is I literally create this thing in my mind. I can fall in love with someone. I can have a relationship with them. I can get excited with them, but they never have to know about it. I also call it the guru relationship, where I basically can actually get connected to someone intellectually and mentally, and really just have this fantasy. And that fantasy becomes so important to me. And after a while, I forget that it's a fantasy. I think it's a reality. One of the classic cases I've always worked on, a scary case. A young lady, we finally got some help for her, but she was so scared to death of relationships that she created a fantasy boyfriend who lived in North Carolina, a long distance relationship. She created a fantasy engagement ring. She created fantasy flowers that were delivered to her house constantly, because everybody thought she was in a committed relationship. So they left her alone. She had a tremendous fear of men, didn't want to get near any men. So she created this magical man, who, by the way, did not exist. But in her mind, she had told a lie so many times and made the story up so many times that she literally believed her own story. The mind is a powerful instrument. If you keep bringing these things into the mind, after a while, it becomes normal to you. We see cults developing from this, all types of stuff. So literally, I can literally use control to get through a situation. She felt safe because nobody would bother her anymore, because she had this wonderful guy. They're going to get married. Everything's going to happen down the road. And she kept telling the story. She even had her family fooled. They kept saying to her, when's he going to come up here? When are we going to meet him? All this kind of stuff and everything else. When things like that started to happen, she got nervous. Now she had to somehow create some more stories to make up for this story and make up for that story. That's what happens in fantasy a lot of times, especially the creative fantasy. So what I do is basically, I have this relationship in my head. And after a while, it can become so scary and become so controlling. But as a result, then it becomes me. You know, we look at fantasy, and by the way, don't get me wrong. Fantasy is wonderful. You know, a nice little fantasy interlude every so often is wonderful. If you know it's a fantasy, if you think it's reality, you're in trouble. And therefore, it's really important. And, you know, we go through this in many ways in the course of our life. For example, one of the most famous things is falling in love. Now, if you're even a healthy person, we normally fall in love, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week. Falling is not love, it's attraction. Even if you're in a good relationship and somebody nice looking comes along, you know, for a couple of minutes, you fall in love. You know, you get attracted. And then two minutes later, they're gone. So the fall in love's over. So it's all part of it. My wife was a joke with me. She said, I had a thing for Goldie Hawn for years ago. So the concept is, you know, we do it with movie stars, different people in this direction. We get infatuated, go through all this. That's all normal stuff. It's called attraction. Then we have what we call romantic love. You can't be a romantic love 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. You'll never make it to work. You're hit by a car crossing the street. Until the mortgage guy comes along and he wants his money, you tell him, but we love each other. And he says, that's nice, as we foreclose on your house. So you can't live. These are interludes, things that are supposed to be. Real love comes from the spirit, comes from the inside. I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. That's where the real aspect of love comes from, and growth comes from, and good relationships come from the inside out, not from the outside in. The other area when it comes to relationships is the caretaker relationship. And caretakers are normally goody two-shoes kids. They're pretty angry goody two-shoes kids. These are goody two-shoes kids who think they know what everybody needs to have. And so I got this quest inside of me of when I want to fix people and take care of people. And that's why they love to be involved in relationships with sickies. The sicker, the better. So I can control. It controls a big piece of caretaking. As a result, then, as long as I have you and you're sick, I can just keep you where you are. There's some rules, though. Caretaker's got all these crazy rules. Don't you dare get better. I got to talk about you all day long and bitch about you all day long, complain about you all day long. You're a way of life for me. I'm addicted to you. It becomes a way of life after a while. And it's scary because I literally have to fix you and control you and organize you and take care of you. And I want you to be everything I want you to be. And so many times I get caught up in this process. And as a result, I end up literally controlling another human being or controlling the situation. We see it on the job. I'm the only one that can do this job. Nobody else can do it. Therefore, everybody on the job depends on me. Did you ever work someplace on the job where one person did so much work and ran so fast and did everything? And you said, what the hell am I working here for? That character's doing everything. Because the job can't function without me. It becomes my way of life after a while. All this stuff is about insecurity. When you're insecure, you got to control. When you're insecure, you live in fear. And these are not relationships. They're control ships, manipulation ships, con ships. I don't call them relationships. And that's why they're scary, because they literally constantly play off of our insecurities. And the bottom line is, I have no idea who I am. So I'm looking for people on the outside to validate me, situations to validate me, what I do to validate me, because I have too much fear and insecurity inside of me to validate myself. And so as a result, very many times, I end up using relationships not as gifts. I use them as ways to manipulate, to con, to get through life, to survive. And the scary thing about this is you can become very vulnerable in these types of relationships. And even the process, so many times when somebody does abandon you or reject you, you go through a process called rebounding a lot of times. It's almost like if I have to end something, I have to have something to begin before I end it. It's a constant process that goes on. And that's where a lot of times people get caught up in the aspect of having affairs and different types of things, because we really can't settle. We can't really work things. We have to work in different directions. I mean, it's classic, this process, because so many times what happens after a period of time, I become so angry. I get angry at you. I tell you about all your faults. And yet, you know what? I want to fix your faults. And so many we stay in these relationships for years. And so many times we even end up either abusing or getting abused in these relationships, these caretaking relationships, because I do everything for you. So I'm now the victim. I'm the victim because I do everything for you. And you don't appreciate it. But no, because I'm saying to you, it's okay for you to use me. But again, I'm scared of relationships. I'm scared of that intimacy. I'm scared of that closeness. I'm scared to get connected. And I can go on and on tonight about unhealthy relationships. What I really want to concentrate on, though, is the concept we really want to work on in this series. And that is the most important thing in life is to build a personal relationship with yourself. Because the most important relationship is in the mirror. You look at yourself every day in the mirror. You're the one who has to live with you, who has to celebrate who you are, to enjoy who you are. The greatest gift of a relationship, or any type of relationship, is, does it enhance me? Does it make my life better? Am I growing from it? What is my attitude towards it? Do I have an attitude of gratitude? Can I love unconditionally? Or do I have conditions on everything and everything in life? Let me tell you one more very unhealthy story, and it happens a lot of times in relationships because of rejection and abandonment. This girl came in to see me one day and she said, Vince, I met this really, really neat guy. And we really get along good together. We have good relations together. Everything's fantastic. It's wonderful. I'm moving in with him. And really, he's got a nice house. Really a good situation. I said, well, what's the problem? She said, well, he has one little idiosyncrasy. I said, what's that? He said, well, in his bedroom, and when I'm laying in bed there, in his bedroom, he has on the wall a photograph of him and his ex-wife. I said, okay. But his ex-wife looks a lot like me. I got to tell you a secret. I said, don't tell anybody I told you this. But I'm going to tell you a secret. You are what we call a second-hand relationship, which means if his first wife decides to come back, he'll dump you in 2 seconds flat. You are a substitute. She didn't really like what I said, but it's also true. Because about 8 months later, she came back to me and said, you were right, Vince. You were right. All he ever talks about is her, not me. So the concept is he just hasn't let go. He hasn't done closure. That's one of the things they tell you when you're ending an unhealthy relationship. Do not get involved in another relationship for at least a year. I know nobody wants to hear that. There's a purpose behind that, though. You have to be able to say goodbye to the old and make time for your own personal growth before you move into something else or jump into something else. There's a purpose behind all that, because the purpose is to stand still and take the time to work on your own personal relationship with self and to be able to build a personal relationship with who you are, because only until I learn to love me and celebrate me and honor me can I then celebrate and honor someone else, or celebrate and honor a job, or celebrate and honor situations in my life. It's got to come from the energy of love that I have inside. That energy will then reach out and touch others. It's got to come from the inside, though, from your heart, not from here. We can analyze everything to death. And yet deep down inside, even though I might go through all these changes and these infatuations and this type, no, it's about, can you truly, truly say this? Can you truly learn to love, to fall in love with yourself? It sounds so strange, doesn't it? And yet it's so important, because it is the ultimate relationship, the love relationship, because then my job only becomes a vehicle. I can look at it with a positive eyes and use it as another way to learn and grow. I can look at different things in life. We even do this with our kids a lot of times. So many how we do it to our kids. I want them to have everything I never had. Therefore, I'm going to plan their life for them. I know a young lady came up to me. She said, Vince, can you talk to my parents? She said, I'm in my second year of college, and boy, they're driving me insane. I said, what's the matter? She said, well, I'm very much into the arts. I love to get involved in the arts, and I love paintings and artwork and stuff to that effect. That's my talent. That's my gift. And my father keeps saying to me, there's no money in that. There's no money in that. How are you going to live and survive? What are you going to do? Go around the neighborhood selling pictures? And my father constantly gets on me and drives me crazy. And I should be going into engineering or some other thing where I can make good money and be okay, and this kind of stuff and everything else. And he's constantly on my back. That's not what I want in my life. I have this energy inside of me, this artistic energy. I want to work with this and work in this direction. And I know if I do, I'm going to alienate my family. And unfortunately, in her case, down the road, she had to go through alienation. And then later on in life, they did come around. Only later on in life, when things she began to put things together. But all of us experience that sometimes when you let go of it, you make change in your life. In my own personal life, I knew for years I had to make a lot of major decisions and changes in my life as I began to do my work and work on myself as a person. I thank God I had a good therapist. I had people that supported me. And yet when I finally made that decision, a lot of people were very upset at me because they have had me up on this pedestal. This is where you're supposed to be. When I left the priesthood, and then later on, then down the road when I got married, oh, what under me, especially my Italian family, they thought this was terrible. I mean, first of all, what are you doing? What are you doing? You had such a nice life, everything taken care of for you. You never have to worry about a thing again. This kind of, I'm just reiterating all my aunts and my uncles. They're playing in my head right now. Then when I finally told them I was getting married, oh boy, my aunt said to me, little boy, you don't know what you're getting into. She was projecting onto me what she was going through in her own thing. But the bottom line was people have a hard time sometimes with change. And that's why so many times in the course of our journey, we cannot give our power or our personhood to another entity, to another human being. We have to be able to own our own power, own our own self. We have to go out, give off our own pity pot and just basically realize the importance of who we are as a person. And I'll tell you, the most powerful thing I believe in the law of attraction. That if I truly do work on myself and I truly do my work and I truly am able, then I'll be able to carry that message to others. It'll happen naturally. You're not going to find a relationship in a bar. You find drunks in a bar. What can I tell you? You're not going to find a relationship in some magical place or something to that effect. You find it within your heart, within yourself. The truly love is to be able to share that love unconditionally. And yet, so many times in life, we have so many conditions. We have to be able to loosen up a little bit and to realize the fact that love of the spirit from the inside of you. Because I really believe we speak to people and people are attracted to us through our spirit, through our energy, to how we feel about ourselves as a person. You carry a message in very simple ways, even carry a message by not even saying a word. It's the energy that comes out from you. You can experience it. I've said this so many times. Children and animals understand this more than we do as adults. Children know when you don't like them. Children can feel the energy. You're going to say all the words you want to say. They can feel the energy coming out of you. Pets are the exact same way. A pet knows when you don't want the pet to be around, the pet picks it up. They have this intuitive energy. And yet it's sad that we have to grow up and lose that. And then we end up with all this craziness, this behavior, and get into situations that make ourselves crazy. And then finally we come to the awakening. I know my own life. I had to beat this living crap out of myself with all this crazy stuff for 44 to 45 years until I finally began the process of change, the process of growth, the process of taking risks, of moving to a new direction. When you do that, then the spirit of your energy comes out of you and touches others and attracts them into your life. You attract into your life what's going on inside of you. Don't be running around blaming everybody else. We attract what's going on inside of us. And therefore, we got to be honest about it, face it, and deal with it. Yes, you'll have conflict, you'll have confusion, you'll go through changes. It's all part of the journey. And yet it's okay. It's also okay to be able to realize the fact that you'll need people in your life that you can have a platonic relationship with. People you feel comfortable with, you can share things with. That's okay too. We learn that as we learn where people are on the journey in our life. So what I'll do in the second talk, I'll take you on a journey of boundaries, how to be able to identify people in your life, where they are. But it's all about me developing a healthy relationship with me. Because only until I do that, only until I go through my own growth process and begin to experience the gift of who I am, can I then be able to bring that out to others and share that with others and connect it with others. And so tonight I realized we talked a lot about negative relationships, hoping to get too depressed. The bottom line is We have to realize the fact that sometimes we got to go through this to finally come to that realization, that awakening, as I call it. And remember something which is really important. Take a minute now and think about the 12 steps of our recovery programs. The early founders had a lot of wisdom. You notice how the first 11 steps of the program are for us to work on ourselves, nobody else. Isn't that wonderful? They're for us to work on ourselves. Having done our work, then you have a message to carry to others. And that's why the steps are so important. It's a way of life. And yet you got to make that investment. Is it hard work? I hope so. I really do. I don't imagine. It's got to be hard work. You got to be able to work through things in life and grow. At the same time, you have fun too. And so building a relationship with yourself can be a lot of fun. So learn to loosen up, to relax, to enjoy life. Take it easy, all right? Because sometimes we get codependence, especially, we get a little nutsy up here. We try to figure everything out, figure life out. I get a kick sometimes, some people say to me, because when I run these inner child groups, they say to me, well, if I do the group, what will be my end results? I said, I don't know. Do the group and find out. What can I tell you? Because guess what? If I have 8 people in the group, there'll be 8 different foundations will come out of it. Well, I don't know. I can only tell how it works for me. So I learned this over the course of the journey. So tonight when I pray, I'm going to pray that God will help us and guide us on this journey. On the journey of developing and looking at relationships as gifts given to us by God, the God of our understanding, to help us in our own personal growth. That's exactly what our relationship is supposed to be about, to help us to grow. So let us pray. God, we come before you tonight in prayer. Come before you in thanksgiving and gratitude. We thank you for all the gifts you send into our life. We thank you for all the relationships that are part of our life. We know that constantly we're sending messengers, teachers. You're sending different situations in life to help us to grow and become stronger. Teach us to be open to new growth and new direction. Help us not to be afraid. Teach us to reach out for help and guidance as we go through this journey. It's a journey called life. It's a beautiful journey. We'll have pitfalls, we'll make mistakes when we go through changes, yes. Hopefully we can learn from them and grow from them and not beat ourselves up. And realize, just on a journey to develop the energy, the love, and the power we have inside of us as people. For we are your gift, we are your creation. Help us to rediscover it and to live it in a spirit of openness, a spirit of honesty, but above all, a spirit of gratitude. We pray and we ask for your guidance. We pray for your direction as we walk this journey. And we hope and pray we can walk it with you. We ask this in your name. Amen. And now we're going to make an attempt at, if you don't mind, I'm muting at doing this. And my maestro is not here tonight. So I guess I'm going to have to be the maestro tonight. Okay, so we'll take a minute. And now the serenity prayer, the we version.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.